Today, I'm in Andorra. Where's that, you ask, and why am I here? Well, by the end of this video, I'll have given you the answers, and if I've done a really good job, you'll be rushing to plan your own trip here. Let's get right into it. If you're new here, my name is Jonny. I'm originally from the UK, but I've been living and working in Spain for the past 4.5 years. I cover topics such as living abroad, travel, investing and saving on my channel, with a focus on Spain, of course, given that I live there. So let me tell you a little bit about Andorra. It is a European microstate that lies between France and Spain, in the middle of the Pyrenees, a very small country with an estimated population of around 80,000 people, and it's the only country in the world where Catalan is the official language. That said, French and Spanish are widely spoken and used given the proximity to both countries and the influence that both countries have had on Andorra, and of course English is spoken and used a little bit as well. Now, despite being right in the middle of two EU members, Andorra itself is not in the EU, it's not in the Schengen area, but it does use the euro. So very interesting from that perspective, and a little bit more about that as we go through the video. And given its location on the map, it's about a 3-hour drive from Barcelona, 3-hour drive from Toulouse if you're coming from France. From Madrid, it's about a 6-hour drive, so a little bit further, but I can tell you that it's definitely worth the drive off. And so if Andorra is such a small country, why am I here sat telling you about it and making a video about it? Well, Andorra has a lot to offer, both for people who are coming as visitors, as travelers, but also for entrepreneurs and investors. So I'm going to tell you what Andorra has to offer for both groups of people, starting with the travelers. Being in the Pyrenees, being in the mountains, Andorra has some wonderful nature to offer, some of the best that I think I've seen so far in my life. You find a lot of green spaces, a lot of mountains, a lot of beautiful viewpoints to look over parts of the country as well. Very picturesque. You've got rivers that run through, there's waterfalls in Andorra as well. And sometimes I'd be looking around, I'd be thinking, like, this looks like Switzerland, like it looks like a picturesque village in Switzerland, like really beautiful, honestly. As I say though, it is in the mountains, and as a result, it is quite hilly, so be prepared. Bring appropriate footwear, definitely. There's a lot of different activities to do as well, based on the nature. There's a place called Naturland, which is near the border with Spain, and it's basically like a big outdoor activity field, so there's a lot of different things to do. The most notable one being the longest toboggan ride in Europe, which is about 5.3 kilometers. Quite a thrill for sure. Outside of that, of course, there's other things. There's archery, there's a zip line, there's like a high jump, there's a restaurant up there as well, so really worth visiting. A little bit pricey, you're looking at 35-50 euros entry, but for all the activities you get and for the time you'll spend there, you can get your money's worth. And for people who are more into life in the city, then there's a lot of shops and malls in Andorra as well, particularly in Andorra la Vella, the capital, and you'll find a range of stores where you can shop and find some bargains because Andorra's VAT rate is only 4.5%. So it is kind of known as like a duty-free destination, and you can buy a lot of things here for cheaper than you might be able to in other EU countries. You'll see that VAT reflected in the price of certain things that you buy. Like, for example, if you come in with the car and you're filling up with petrol or diesel, you'll see that the price is a lot lower probably than in your home country. The only thing to be careful with there, though, of course, is with certain types of goods. Then there are limits as to what you can take back into France and Spain. Because you can only enter Andorra through these countries, that means you have to exit through one of these countries as well. And French and Spanish customs have strict allowances as to what can be brought in undeclared. Because of all the mountains and all the slopes it has, that a lot of people come here for skiing holidays as well. So, and whilst because it's the summer and I haven't seen snow personally, I do know of people who've come up here in the winter time to ski. Whilst I personally haven't been here in the winter, I have seen photos of friends of mine that have come to Andorra in the winter for snow sports, even just to visit the city in the winter as well, and it does look incredible. All right, so that's what's on offer for tourists. Now, why would an investor or a business person be interested in Andorra? There are quite a few things that would draw someone to Andorra if they're an investor or a business person. So let's get into that now. Well, the key benefit that an investor or a business person would have here is the low taxation system that exists in Andorra. So the current tax system in Andorra allows a person to pay 0% tax up to 24,000 euros of earnings. Then between 24,000 and 40,000 euros, they'll pay 5% on that. And then on anything they earn above 40%, they'll pay just 10% income tax. So someone who's a high income earner would definitely benefit from such a tax system. And Andorra has actually kind of become like a Spanish YouTuber's paradise, because a lot of the Spanish YouTubers that have become successful have actually moved here for the tax benefits, essentially. However, with that said, Andorra is not an EU country, so there are different routes that you have to consider when moving here. One is obviously finding employment through a local employer in Andorra, and they kind of take care of your visa for you. I don't know how difficult that is. I would imagine it's a little bit tricky given the size of the country, and I can't see there being a whole load of jobs advertised kind of worldwide for people to come to Andorra. Just my opinion, I could be wrong, but yeah, I would expect it would be a challenge. The next way to come to Andorra is if you're an investor and you're looking for a passive residency, that if you invest 600,000 euros in Andorran assets, then you can be granted a passive residency. So it wouldn't give you the right to work, but you would have the right to reside in Andorra, and you would need to complete a minimum stay of 90 days in the country. Now, the third way to come if you're an entrepreneur is via the active residency. So to have an active residency in Andorra, you basically need to make a bank deposit of 50,000 euros and be the owner of a company. And then with that, you can come to Andorra, run your business, and then if you stay for 183 days in the country, then you would be considered tax resident and you'd be able to take advantage of those tax benefits. Keep in mind though that these thresholds used to be lower as well. So the 50,000 deposit used to be 15,000 and the 600,000 investment used to be 400,000. So the Andorran government has increased the requirements, and I believe as well there's an annual quota as to how many active residency permits can be issued as well. I saw 900 per year online, I could be wrong, but I think in order to stop everybody just coming in and flooding Andorra, then there is a limit on how many people can take advantage of that each year. And so if you're an investor, an entrepreneur, you come to Andorra, not only do you get low taxes, but you get a reasonable cost of living as well, I'd say. Now, in terms of cost of living, I would say Andorra is reasonably priced. Like, it's not necessarily cheap, but at the same time, if you come in from a Northern European country, you'll still find Andorra probably to be a little bit lower in terms of cost of living than where you are. I put the cost of living from the capital city, Andorra la Vella, in Numbeo, compared it with Madrid, and it came out at about 5 to 6% lower in general. So we could say that it's comparable to Madrid, maybe to Barcelona as well, in terms of the cost of living. Let's take rent, for example. So Andorra is kind of divided up into parishes, which are like areas of the country. And in the cheaper areas, so like away from the center, you can get an apartment for around, 14 to 16 euros per meter squared. So typically for like an 80 meter squared apartment, you might be looking at 1,200 to 1,400 euros a month. If you want to look at some of the more expensive regions like Andorra la Vella and Escaldes and Gordani, then you're looking at probably 19, 20 meters squared and upwards per meter squared, basically. And so a 100 meter squared apartment in the capital, for example, might be 2,000 euros upwards per month in rent. Now, take in mind these prices are not really looking at luxury properties, which of course will be much more expensive. And they do exist because of some of the wealthy people that live in Andorra. And if you're looking at buying a property in Andorra, then the prices can range greatly. At the lower end, you can be expecting, maybe 300,000-400,000 euros for an apartment, again, depending on the area. But you can easily get up to the 600,000-700,000. And then, as I say, with some of the new builds, some of the luxury properties, you're easily into the millions in terms of what a property can cost you in Andorra. Outside of rent, like groceries are a little bit more expensive than in Spain, that I did notice. But eating out, for example, is not too bad. Like, you go to kind of a mid-level restaurant, you can expect probably between 50, 20 euros per head, depending on what kind of restaurant it is and how much you want to eat, of course. So as it's not necessarily cheap to live in Andorra, you can still make it work. But of course, if you come into Andorra as like an investor or an entrepreneur, that is probably because you've got a high level of income anyways. So you're not really going to struggle with the cost of living, in my view. There you have it, guys. That's what Andorra has to offer to different types of people who are coming here. I hope you found this video interesting and helpful. Leave a comment and let me know if you've been to Andorra. If you're thinking of going to Andorra, I'd love to hear from you. So next time, I'll see you on the next one. And let's get this money.